The guest house, eco guest house. We have the restaurant, vegan restaurant. Clicker. Turn the press button. Okay.
Experiment. Click both buttons and see what happens.
Oh, there you go. Why not? Go next slide straight away. So, firstly, I want to say thank you so much for everybody who is here today. Today, I stand on the shoulder of giants. Honestly, when we first started in 2007, there was no such organizations like this. Today we have Expo Bali, Meraputi Hijau, we got Bye Bye Plastic Bags. So big round of applause for the big organizations today. Round of applause, louder! Bali wasn't like this before, so we'll touch upon that in a second. Today it makes a lot of sense to be eco-friendly. I dare you to name me one company today who will open and say, I don't care about the environment. I want to throw away all my plastics. I don't care. No way. That's impossible. Today in 2020, we know we have a waste problem. But when we first started in 2007, it was a very different story. The second thing is, we don't consider ourselves as professionals. We're not consultants. We're honestly just business owners who have a guest house. But we wanted to do it a bit differently. But we started in a time where there was no such infrastructure. And finally, we want to share some of our tips that we do at Serenity, not because it's just good for the environment, but it makes business sense. And that's a very crucial point. Because saving the environment is important, but if your company goes bankrupt in a few months, so long. All right, so today, 2020, we know everything about waste problem. This year in January 2020, Fodor, like TripAdvisor, put Bali on the no list. We're still on that list. The list is for all the places in the world where they tell you not to go as a tourist because the negative impacts of tourism outweigh the positive impacts. We're still on that list with COVID. So we have two things really bad happening. And today we still produce waste. We're still just going at it, producing 3,800 tons of waste every day. We're still at it. Although we have the ban, although we have all the initiatives, we're still producing waste. But let's go back in time. Well, first thing first, don't forget, throwing rubbish into the landfill straight away is not the solution. I'm sure everybody here already knows that. But let's go back in time. It was 2007 when Serenity Eco Guest House first started. At that time, for example, Eco Bali just launched a year ago. Before that, no one knew about waste management. And in December, there was a peace conference. And all these great speakers were talking about, peace and love and saving the environment. But the criticism was the Expo itself was not doing any kind of waste management. The reporters were saying, wait, you're still throwing rubbish in the streams and the rivers. There was a disconnect between the people speaking and the reality. So that was the year that we first started. Our biggest question, as we're not professionals, could it be done? 2007 was a very different time than today. Today, waste is a big problem. Back then, especially when we first started in Canggu was a jungle. People talk about eco-friendly, they're crazy. It's like, well, we're surrounded by jungles. What rubbish? What waste? There's no such thing as waste. So that was our biggest question. Can amateurs start an eco guest house? Back then in 2007, the people who were talking about being eco-friendly were the 5-star hotels. They were the consultants sent from overseas to come here specifically for a certain project. First, we didn't have the money for that. We're local. We're business owners. We have a small hostel to begin with. But we wanted to do something. And our biggest fear was, if we failed, will we be laughed at? If we failed, will we go bankrupt? Because at that time, it felt like being eco-friendly was expensive. The news always talked about how many millions they spent on this project or that project. This was 2007, a long time ago. And to add, Does anybody know the price of land in Canggu in 98? How much?
About 20 million per ara.
About 20 million per ara. Today it's 1.5 M. Let me put it in dollars. It used to be $2,000 and now it's $100,000 for 100 meters squared. And the reason that land was so cheap was because Canggu, the land in Canggu was so infertile. After decades of using chemicals in the rice fields, the farmers could not grow any more rice. So for them, this land was useless. If you look around Canggu, land is still considered not made for farming. So we bought this land for really cheap because the value back then was considered only for farming. Now, of course, tourism, bad luck for those who sold the land there. But that was the fact. So we started our house not on a fertile piece of land, but an infertile piece of land. A land that was considered nothing else before making a house. And we had to struggle with not only a regular house, because to understand, it was first my family house. It was a place of living. And we just thought about making a house. But in 2007, we said we wanted to be an eco guest house. But back then, to be an eco guest house, you had to fight through 7 perceptions, right? The first perception you can see here is vegan food. Today you go to Canggu, there's all these vegan restaurants, all these choices. Back then, there was not many restaurants. So for somebody to go to Canggu was already an ordeal. For somebody to go to a vegan restaurant, there was not that many. How many reviews we received of people saying, oh, there was no eggs on toast. Oh, there was no milk. Oh, there was no chicken or meat. It was a real struggle. And I say this as the son of the visionaries, my dad and mom, they're the visionaries. So the next 7 slides is more about my grievances. Because while the parents were the visionaries, I was the manager. And I was in charge of handling the complaints. They got all the praises. Oh, I want to give a good review. Oh, Daniel, so good place. And for bad reviews, they come to me. So what I'm trying to share is that being eco-friendly is really important, but we also have to be realistic, right? All the customers are different. And at the end of this 7 slides, I will share too why you should be eco-friendly. But the first one, yes, we were only vegan food. We were serving vegan food. The second thing was the composting. Sure, we're talking about composting now, it makes a lot of sense. But if you don't do it well, it can smell. And things like leaves, for us, is carbon. It's made to make a good compost. But for many people, it's considered waste. In the very beginning, when we first started, our neighbors had empty land all around our house. So we would throw leaves on our neighbor's land because we were just trying to share the love. But then the Kalian got a complaint from the neighbors saying that Serenity is throwing rubbish on our land. And it was a scary time because if people say Serenity is throwing rubbish on the neighbor's land, that sounds bad. They didn't think about, oh, they're trying to make my soil more fertile. They're trying to make my soil made for, without throwing rubbish to the landfills. The leaves are now fertilizing the land instead of going to landfills. That was the second thing that I hated. Of course, in 2007, we had a different kind of crowd. Canggu had very little customers. Today, you go to a hotel, you see all these signs saying, please, if you throw your towel on the ground, we'll change it. If you hang it, we won't change it. That makes sense today. Or please turn off your AC and light when you leave the room. That makes sense today. In 2007, that didn't make sense. The biggest complaint that we had in our TripAdvisor reviews was I paid 50% more than the neighbors, and they had all these rules. They were telling us, turn off the lights, turn off the AC. They're so greedy. They're so greedy. Oh, and the towel, they would never change it unless I asked them. That was the struggle. That's the real struggle. And I got, of course, all the bad reviews. That's mine. We have a bamboo building. And of course, you can see, especially in the mansion, bamboo is super nice. It looks super eco-friendly. But when you don't understand the whole eco-friendly movement, and you're staying in a room made out of bamboo, obviously it's more noisy. So you don't care if it's eco-friendly. If it's 2 a.m. and your neighbors go to the bathroom, you're not going to give us a bad review. That's just the reality of it. Yeah, that's just the reality.
But what about sex? That's even
Yeah, that too. I didn't want to mention that, but that happens too. That happens too. We upcycled everything in Serenity. Well, we do our best. Today, you say upcycling. It sounds so cool. During the Expo, you see all these items from bicycles with upcycled material. That's amazing. But back then, that was considered cheap. It was considered dirty. Wow, you guys are so cheap. You guys don't want to buy new things? Like, what is wrong with you guys? That was the struggle that we had to fight with in 2007. This one's a big one, pest control. Since 2007, we do not do any fogging. We do not do any killing of mosquitoes or rodents or pests or even scorpions. We try not to kill. And that's a tough one right there, because mosquitoes, unless you're used to it, you will not like it. No one likes mosquitoes. At Serenity, we do our best to use only natural solutions, no chemicals. And that's a tough one, because when your reviews are saying lots of mosquitoes, there was a rat in my room, it doesn't matter if you're eco-friendly, you're gonna get a bad review. So that's the fact. And this one, my favorite one, a messy garden. These are the reviews that I received back then. Back then, who knew about permaculture? They looked at their neighbors, all the leaves were raked up, nothing was just a green grass. You go to Serenity, and everything is a mess. Everything is a mess. Now the good news, you're looking at these 7 things, and Dad's like, why are you sharing all these bad things about Serenity? The fact is, we're still open. Even during COVID, we're still open. Because despite having so many bad reviews about what we were doing, 80% of our customers supported Serenity. They enjoyed Serenity. So what happened was, these same people who liked Serenity and showed support came back the next year. And I can dare say, before COVID, in February 2020, our average occupancy per month was 95% year-round. Year-round. We were receiving 300 customers per day. That was how crazy it was. Because what happened was, the same customers who stayed at our place came back next year, and next year. And the 20% of people who didn't like Serenity, well, they were the people who got stuck in Serenity for some reason. We had a few alcoholics, we had a few yada yada yada. They never come back, and that's okay. Not to say anything bad about alcoholism. But the point was, people came back, right? They had the whole loyalty towards what we were doing. So here are the 7 things that we do. And this is the message that we're trying to share to people, is that these solutions don't cost a lot of money. They will save you money. So what we're doing for the environment is not only good for the conscious, but it's good for the wallet too, especially during COVID times when every penny counts. First thing, permaculture. Now earlier today someone said permaculture is permanent culture. I've understood it as permanent agriculture. It's the same thing. In my personal definition, permaculture is to utilize the land to its maximum potential without destroying the land itself. So we're talking about production, but continuous production. The same principles. Now what is not permaculture? Sorry to say, but when you have a green grass and only a few trees, that's not really permaculture. You're forcing nature to only have a few types of plants. What happens to the others? You gotta kill them off. You gotta rake them off. And killing is usually done through chemicals. And because you're only using one type of plant or 2 types of plants, the soil nutrition is really low. Of course, because each plant requires different nutritions. So if grass only takes certain nutritions. So what you need to do, your gardener may not say it's chemical, but they'll put what is called ZA. ZA is toxic. You don't want to put that in your soil. So you should ask your gardener, what do you do to make your grass so green? Because that's not natural. Right? And the leaves, you see no leaves on site. Where do the leaves go? The truth is, all those leaves are now going to the landfill. So every day that you see no leaves on your property, those leaves are going to a landfill. That's the reality of it. So you look at this, it may seem more clean. All we did is put a fence around the trees, and this you can do in your own house. It costs nothing. You're telling your gardener, don't throw the leaves in your rubbish bin, put it around the trees, around the fence. So you get multiple things. First, the leaves, the nutrition of the leaves go back to the soil. And not only that, all the weeds surrounding your trees, they will not survive because the mulch is protecting that layer. You require less water because the leaves create what is called mulch. They absorb the water so it lasts longer. And then you see all these different plants. You see sambiloto, you see ginger. You want to have a garden that is useful. That is the key of permaculture. You see a green garden with just leaves, what's the purpose of that? Especially during COVID. People who have villas, they're scratching their heads because you have these beautiful gardens that have no purpose. These are, for them, a cost. The gardener is a cost. Taking care of the garden is a cost. But it's not. When you start to plant things that you can eat, that can heal you and are smelling beautiful, that is a purposeful garden. That is a garden that is not a cost. That makes you money. Especially during COVID, money is important. That's one big reason. You're looking at these bins and you're like, well, that's not uniform, it doesn't look pretty. Who cares? Who cares about the bins? The point is, people always have excuses for waste separation. And the biggest danger is when the business in the front has all these 3 bins with waste separation. You enter the property and you go into the hotel rooms or whichever room, hospital room, and there's no waste separation there. So what do you think happens? They get the bin from the room, they bring it to, oh, it's all together, they just put it in one bin. Waste separation is simple. You get whatever sort of bin in your property, you line them up, you color them in uniform color, and that's it. The cost of reusing these pieces of bins are cheap, super cheap. Composting is a big one. We were doing in 2007, people getting bad reviews about us because we were composting. But composting will save you money. You don't have to pay the rubbish truck so much money every month. The compost itself is the fertilizer for your soil. That is the reason that our land is full of trees, purposeful trees, fruit trees, and herb trees, because we do our own composting. Composting is super simple. You cannot fail composting. Good composting is done in 30 days. Bad composting takes up to a year. But you cannot fail composting. That's the easiest thing to start. Vermicompost, you're using worms. Worms are great eaters, up to, I think, 1-to-1 ratio of their body weight. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think. Some people here.
Correct.
Is it correct? Yeah, 1-to-1. So they eat like crazy. Just give them the food and they'll eat it up. A wastewater garden. Actually, I gotta thank to Pachakra, you see here. He was the one who helped us to create the wastewater garden. The wastewater garden is a fancy word of basically saying you're reusing your toilet water. And this for me makes the most business sense, because not only is your toilet water full of nutrition and going to fertilize your land, but you now don't have to call the septic tank removal people. In Bahasa they say jasa kuras. Every time a jasa kuras comes to clean up your septic tank, you're paying upwards of 500,000, sometimes per year. Now this solution is not just good for the environment, it's good for your wallet too. You were asking about how we use no chemicals. We have a very simple process. And this is supposed to be known for everybody. The first step, look at your property. Mosquitoes can only breed in areas where there's still water. I met Norm from Southern Buena Lodge, and they said, when we applied the same thing, check your roof gutters. Your roof gutters, if they're not working properly, mosquitoes breed there. The second thing we do, we spray every day a combination of neem, lemongrass, garlic, and soap nut. That helps to reduce the mosquitoes. Not kill, reduce the mosquitoes. And the final step, your garden is your shield towards mosquitoes. Mosquitoes hate lemongrass, they hate garlic, they hate mint, basil, tulsi, samiloto. All these strong smelling plants, mosquitoes hate. So the more you make your house inhospitable for mosquitoes, eventually you'll have less mosquitoes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does someone have this business in Bali? I'm happy to pay someone to come and do this in my house.
Yeah,
Does
that's
this business exist in Bali? Does anyone know?
Yeah,
Natural.
Yes.
yes, so before COVID, no, but during COVID, now we offer the solution.
There's several people offering.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I should say something. My name's Trudy.
Hi, Trudy.
Some people call me the mosquito lady, but I have a company called Mosquito Lady Consulting. We do eco-friendly mosquito control. But we do everything. We look for the sources in water. We don't spray any kind of, we don't spray anything. But we do have some special materials that kill larvicides. So eco-friendly larvicides. Anyway, yes.
Awesome. What we're trying to share, round of applause for Trudy. I know of your work. What I'm trying to share here is that getting rid of mosquitoes, it's not high science. You want to reduce the amount of mosquitoes, reduce of places where they breed or where they hide during the day, right? And finally, this is a simple one, locally sourced food. Being cool is to get your food from the farmer, farm to table. That's cool. So these are the 7 things that we do at Serenity that make business sense. Not just good for the environment, but great for your wallet too. The reason that we're open now, because of COVID, we have like 5 customers now. We don't have 300 like before. The reason that we're still open today is because our garden still has purpose. Our gardeners still go in every day. We still do our composting. We still tend to our plants and harvest chili, we harvest bananas, coconuts, because our garden has purpose.
Can I rent by the month?
Rent what by the month?
A room.
Yeah, please.
I'm moving in tomorrow.
Yes. So that's that. I want to say again, today we stand on the shoulders of giants. Giant companies who are doing such great things for Bali. If there's one thing that we can do today, is use the solution that they have already provided. Right now, as Melati said, we have all the solutions. It's time for action. If not now, then when? When the customers start coming in because the borders are open, we're going to forget about the whole thing about the environment. But now is the time to look at your business, to look at your property. Is my garden useful? Is it doing anything for my wallet or is it draining my wallet? So now, it's open Q&A, but I want to say thank you very much for listening to me.
Next time really speak into that microphone and dazzle these people because your knowledge is probably better than most of the people that do anything with organics in Bali. And by the way, I have a question. How many certified organic farms are there in Bali, do you know?
I do not know. It's not like France. In France, we have the certification bio, but in Indonesia, there's not yet one to exist. Please correct me.
No,
if I'm
there
wrong.
is certification, yes.
Okay.
Government has a certification for organic, but actually, just so you know, with all these amazing vegan restaurants in Bali, there's only 5 certified organic farms in all of Bali. So don't tell me that you're going to a vegan restaurant that's organic, because most of them are not.
Unless you grow by yourself. You grow it yourself.
Well, no, you grow it yourself, you know.
Just in response to that, there's a lot of growers here that are doing all of the right practices to be certified organic, but it means they can't get certification because their neighbour is not, so they can't be classified.
Not true. You get certification for organic if your land has been completely diversified from chemicals for 20 years. That's the law. Not 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It takes 20 years to decontaminate soil up to 20 meters deep. So you would have to replace 20 meters of soil to become 100% organic. That's a fact.
Alright, all spared
Rama.
in war and love. Okay, Dad, yes?
Hydroponics and aquaponics and be organic in 6 months.
Yes, Papa, yes.
Okay, so Rama, you were saying, don't say there is no vegan,
No, I said.
organic. Yeah.
The problem with misinformation in Bali is somebody will say, oh, we're completely vegan and we're completely
Yeah.
organic. Nowhere in the world is there such a
It's
thing
going
as
out of
100% organic. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's correct.
No such thing.
Question and answer.
But yeah, I mean, can I say I'm so glad that we're having this conversation in 2020 because 13 years ago there was no such talk of that. So thank you very much. Any last questions? Yes?
Yes, sorry. I just want to finish. Also, I want to say to join Krishna, my son. Like Krishna say, we are not professional, and but what we try to do is to do something, and to be perfect is very hard. But yeah, like the example of Krishna, when long time ago when I was doing compost in the front of my house, they sent me the police. They say, we was in France that time, and they say, hey, Mr. Daniel, you throw away rubbish in the land. I said, no, it's a compost. What? It's the rubbish. Take out.
Tell people how long you've lived in Bali.
Yeah, so it's 31 years I'm living here, and yeah, so the eco story is a long story. Yeah, but you can always do something. You know, like now we are talking about compost and talking about rubbish separation. It's like natural. But 25 years ago, when we was doing like that, we was like a crazy guy, you know. I mean, like Krishna said, our place it looks like a crap, you know. I mean, it was like a patchwork. Yeah. Sorry to get the bad review, but on the end of the story, now you come in the good review. Yeah. Thank you.
Krishna, can I ask you a question?
Maybe this
What's
is
it like to have a father that's one of the most progressive men in Bali and follow that up?
That's the giant shoulders you were talking about.
You were talking about the wastewater. You put the wastewater, the grey.
wastewater garden?
The wastewater from the toilet you put onto the garden. How do you treat it?
How do I treat it? So,
What do you do?
since we're not using chemicals on our property, it's actually much easier to use the wastewater. But basically the wastewater garden, the way it works, you have the regular septic tank, and then when it overflows, it goes to the second tank, and then the third phase it goes through a filter system, such as small rocks, and from there it goes to the property. That's enormous. Yeah, so instead of, I was rushing that part, but basically most septic tanks, first the waste goes to rivers, and the rivers, there's a process called eutrophication, which is the excessive richness of nutrients in the water, which causes that algae blooms grow up like crazy, and that takes away all the oxygen from the water. So we want to avoid that. But honestly, wastewater garden, they save money. They save a lot of money. Yeah. Awesome, Greg. Awesome. Yes, John.
Krishna, while we're on the subject of wastewater gardens and toilets and things, how do you get guests to stop using toilet paper and use the spray nozzle?
It's not easy. I'll be honest. Now I'm the manager of Serenity, but in the beginning I was kind of the pool attendant and the gardener. I'll be honest. A few times I had to plug the toilet full of poo and everything. So it's not easy. You have to put signs in the toilets. You have to have a lot of patience. Honestly, that's the easiest thing.
I can answer that. I can
Please.
answer the question. he's
Have a
asking.
bin in the toilet, for example.
Okay, so the question you're asking is the gray water safe for your garden and your vegetables? What's your question?
so irrespectful.
You don't have to treat the water. The gray water systems that are being designed today, like one he showed
Who
you,
is that?
there's no toxicity at all in the gray water, almost none. It's almost like you can drink it.
I've been using that system for 10 years successfully, so I agree with you.
Well, okay, there are different systems that they have today that you can build for your system in your house. Like you go to green school and they'll teach you how to do it, which you can drink the gray water.